Welcome to Media Melanie TV. Today I'm back to talk about Silo Season 3, which returns to Apple TV on July 3rd. There are going to be 10 episodes in total, which will drop weekly on Fridays. And the sci-fi mystery has already been renewed for a 4th season. It will be the final season. Production has already wrapped, so we should be getting season 4 early 2027. And that means that the show's ending is fully mapped out. For this video and for my coverage of season 3, I am approaching this strictly as a TV viewer. I have not read Hugh Howey's book, so I would appreciate keeping any book spoilers out of the comments, please and thank you. But today I'm going to break down the trailer, everything we know, new and returning cast, and just the basic premise of this 3rd season. In case you need a quick refresher, the show follows about 10,000 people who live in an underground silo. This society has basically been told that the world outside is toxic, and nobody really knows why the silo was built. The builder is a mystery, and what actually happened to cause people to retreat to the silo is also unknown. Our lead, Juliette Nichols, played by Rebecca Ferguson, has been digging into these questions, and the more she learns, the more dangerous it gets. All right, so just a really quick recap on where season 2 left off. First of all, at the end of season 1, Juliette Nichols was sent outside to clean, but because Supply had given her the good tape for her suit, unlike others who have cleaned before and perished on the hill outside on the display, she's able to walk over the hill and actually finds another silo after walking over some pretty crunchy bones getting there. And there she learns that there are other survivors and there are other silos. And she meets Solo, played by Steve Zahn, who, by the way, is returning for season 3. We see a glimpse of him in the trailer with a nice haircut looking all fresh. So I'm wondering, is he going to be in Juliette's silo? Is she going to return to his silo? I'm excited to find out. His character brought a fresh and innocent perspective to everything, and the fact that he lived alone for decades, but also had a lot of the knowledge of the outside world and what came before, was a really interesting story to tell. But basically, season 2 did expand the scale of this. We learned that there are other silos. And Juliette's silo 18 was moving towards a rebellion because Juliette decided not to clean, and typically in these cycles of the silos, that triggers a rebellion. And we learn about the history of Solo's silo as well, with a similar fate. And also, there were a couple of other survivors in Solo's silo that we met towards the end of the season. But Bernard's grip was basically slipping away. Judge Meadows was taken out by him with some poison mushrooms. Lucas Kyle discovered the secret of Salvador Quinn, who only a few others before had witnessed by going down to the bottom of the silo and getting this mysterious message from some crazy AI voice that there is a safeguard, and if you tell anybody about this, it will be enacted. And Juliette learned that the safeguard, in fact, is this pipe that pumps out toxic gas to take everybody out. Robert Sims' wife, Camille, ended up getting sort of the permission to stay inside of the vault. Robert Sims is the new judge who ended up replacing Judge Meadows. He was on judicial. But his wife, Camille, seems like she is going to be the chosen one. Meanwhile, Juliette was able to obtain a suit after a lot of MacGyvering and makes it back to Silo 18. She comes inside the chamber. Bernard meets her, pointing a weapon at her, and Juliette goes to step inside of this chamber, and Bernard actually tries to stop her and says, "No, you're going to burn to death." So they both step inside, they set on fire, and then we had this insane tonal shift where we go to the before times. I literally felt like it was a completely different show, so it was pretty abrupt, and of course that is setting the table here for season 3. We got a glimpse of the Pez dispenser, and focus on the world and the humanity before everything went down that triggered humanity retreating into these silos. We meet Daniel Keene, who is involved with the government and had something to do with something heroic that happened in New Orleans. And apparently there was a dirty bomb, and there's a journalist who is meeting with Daniel Keene. Helen Drew is her name, and seemingly they're meeting for a date, but it seems like a lot more because she is questioning whether or not there was a dirty bomb in the first place and whether or not the US government would be retaliating against Iran. And she appears to be investigating all of this and maybe one of the first people to stumble upon whatever this mystery/conspiracy is. All right, but before we get more into the trailer breakdown and what we know about season 3, please do go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I will be here with weekly videos on Silo. And I'm really excited to return for the third season. Again, I did cover season 2 if you need a little bit of a refresher. Other shows include From on MGM Plus, The Way Home on Hallmark, which is a really touching family drama time travel show, one of my favorites of all time. I've dropped a full season review on Every Year After, a little bit before that. And then coming up, a full season review on Elle, which is the prequel to Legally Blonde. It's set in the 90s. It's a lot of fun. And I'm probably going to be covering Sterling Point, which is a coming of age story that will drop as a binge on Prime Video. And potentially Ryan Murphy's The Shards. And I'll be back with some more information on both of those, so be sure you stick with me. All right, so according to Apple, season 3 is going to be about Juliette getting back to the silo. And it's also going to explore this origin story. And basically that was centuries earlier. And it looks like it's going to be split between these two timelines. One of my concerns about the season is, are we going to spend too much time on the origin story and not focus as much and dig as deep into the story of the silo, which is something that we've had for these first 2 seasons. So hopefully the balance will be sufficient for viewers who tune in for all of the silo content. But also, I'm excited to see exactly what this mystery is, who built the silos, and all of the mystery surrounding it. Juliette appears to be suffering from some kind of memory loss, which sometimes I'm a little bit iffy about, right? Like, amnesia can be a very convenient plot device. But at the same time, maybe that is exactly what we need to set the dramatic tension down below. Because if Juliette came back and was able to just seamlessly tell everybody what's going on, that in itself could trigger even more rebellion, which had seemingly stopped once Juliette returned and everybody saw her coming back over the display. Now, she knows something had happened, and based on the trailers, getting little snippets and flashes of memories, but it appears that Camille and the other powers that be are likely giving her some kind of drugs that are stopping her from remembering. And that is basically erasing or blocking her memories of everything that happened in Solo Silo. But obviously she must remember. We see Solo coming at one point, and it looks, based on the trailer, like Juliette is going to do something and go on some other mission. And by the way, this character is so much fun. I likened her to MacGyver quite a bit during season 2. She is so physically capable. She's smart. She's an engineer, and she's a lot of fun to watch. She gives no Fs, and I love that about her. And I should also say that she's probably going to feel pretty triggered because, unfortunately, her dad made a huge sacrifice and is no longer present in the silo. And the biggest questions heading into the season, basically, when is Juliette going to get her memories back? And when she does, what exactly is she going to do? Who is she going to trust? Obviously, Mechanical and Juliette have had a long-standing relationship, so I imagine our usuals, Knox and Shirley and Walker, are going to be a big part of that. I love Knox and Shirley, by the way. Will Juliette and the others be able to discover the origin of the silos? Who built them? Why? What's the deal with this safeguard? And is Silo 18 going to survive all of the chaos that season 3 is going to bring? And will Juliette be able to stop this larger potential threat? Is there somebody controlling all of them? Are they an experiment? Is it just AI that is overseeing all of this? There's a lot of questions to answer, and I'm really excited to dig into them. And it does seem like that all of these secrets are tied into the beginnings of the silo and other silos. At one point, we see a flash of green and the beautiful earth, an overview aerial shot of the silos, and then people happily heading in there with little lanyards, which makes me wonder, are they voluntarily going in there, or is there a necessity because something is coming and they're setting these people aside in order to save humanity? So one of the taglines for season 3, "The end of the world had a beginning." And in the YouTube description of the trailer, it reads, "Season 3 of Silo continues the saga of a dystopian society of 10,000 people living underground under mysterious circumstances." All of this while revealing the origin story that happened centuries earlier. In the present, Juliette Nichols survives her forced cleaning but returns with memory loss as the silo recovers from rebellion and faces a dangerous new threat. What is that threat going to be? Meanwhile, in the before times, journalist Helen Drew, played by Jessica Henwick, and Congressman Daniel Keene, played by Ashley Zukerman, who we did see at the end of season 2, they uncover a conspiracy that pulls them into a chain of events with catastrophic, irreversible consequences. The series is based on Hugh Howey's New York Times bestselling trilogy, Silo. And this is quite the ensemble cast. Some of the returning familiar faces that we're going to see: Common, Chinaza Uke, Avi Nash, Alexandra Riley, Shane McRae. Remy Milner, Rick Gomez, Billy Postlethwaite, and Claire Perkins. But joining the cast for season 3, as I previously mentioned, Zukerman and Henwick, but also Laura Ennis, who I love from the early days of ER. And I know she's been on a lot of shows since then. Jessica Brown Finlay, Morven Christie Reed, Reed Birney, and Matt Craven. But also Colin Hanks is set to appear. He's going to be a recurring character, and there's not a lot of information known about him, so I'm really excited to see exactly what role he's going to play. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? To be determined. And as I mentioned, Steve Zahn will also be back with a fresh haircut. And the trailer does focus very heavily on this political intrigue and the conspiracy, the cover-up, and all of it, and how it is connected to the creation of this entire silo system. Now, it appears that Daniel Keene is actually from Georgia, but from what I gathered, the end of season 2 is actually set in Washington, D.C., where it seems as though that was where the dirty bomb went off, but neither one of them actually knew anybody directly who was impacted by it. So maybe there is a big conspiracy about that in the first place by the government as an excuse to create the silos. So let's go over the trailer itself. And first of all, because seasons 3 and 4 were renewed together and production is already done for season 4, season 3 is very likely going to bridge this gap, basically between the mystery phase of the show and the final answers phase and the conclusion, which we will get in season 4. The trailer is set to the song New World Coming. That's by Cass Elliot, and it's sort of this ethereal, dark song that really seems perfect to give off this vibe. The beginning of the trailer, it looks like a little bit of a flashback into what Juliette experienced in season 2. And then a glimpse of her looking outside of a door. And because we know she has the memory loss, she's probably a little bit lost in her head, out of sorts. We see Juliette's body in this fire suit being lifted up the center of the silo with Robert Sims narrating and saying, "You were in there for 3 minutes." We see the fire blazing. He says 3 minutes in a box of fire. As we see some of our mechanical characters, Knox and Shirley, and I believe Teddy, running towards that door. They look inside and literally it looks like she is burning to death. And lucky for her, she has the firefighter suit from the other silo. And Bernard is in there with her with the standard suit. And we don't see Tim Robbins' name returning. And I'm wondering, did he perish or is there a world in which he survived, but they're trying to surprise us and keep that under lock and key? I'm going to say Bernard probably didn't survive, but we will see. We have a scene with Juliette and Robert Sims in front of the overseer, who we know basically seemed to put Camille in charge. I'm sure Robert is pretty utterly dismayed by that. But the overseer says she's had no memory for 3 months. And that immediately establishes the timeline of where we are now. And then we see Camille standing there and it says, "Other than those you've given her." So Camille is very much in charge of giving Juliette false memories or taking away what actually happened. Does Robert know this as well, or is Camille acting on her own? And then we hear this song, There's a New World Coming. And again, I just think it is so perfect here. Nothing better than when music really sets the tone and gives us the vibe that we need. We see a flash of some kind of a tunnel, I imagine underneath the silo with the lights coming on as they do. Typically, it must be a motion sensor. When somebody walks through, the lights just go on one by one. And then we see another flash of somebody in a suit. I'm assuming Juliette outside of the silo. It's hard to tell if that is a flashback to her leaving at the end of season 1, heading into season 2, or is she heading back over to the other silo to get Solo? She didn't promise him, but she did say, "I will do my best," or "I will try my hardest." And I've got to say, the relationship between the two of them, when she went in to give him a hug for testing that suit for her underwater, and just the innocence of him when he welcomed the other people inside of the vault and was explaining ice cream and birds. I get goosebumps even thinking about it. Then there's a shot of, it looks like Juliette as a lone person, kind of dimly lit, walking up the stairs of the silo. She's looking at herself in the mirror and she's basically saying, "I don't even know who's looking back at me." And then part of that is her juxtaposed against herself looking in the mirror, but also then a flash of her in the helmet. And she has this empty, hollow look in her eyes. I mean, she's been stripped of the entire experience she had, which was groundbreaking and something that nobody else knows about. Then we see a set of pills popped onto a table. Juliette is taking them, drinking them with some water, and it looks like Camille is standing there with her. probably making sure that she's actually taking them. Another flash of what seems to be Juliette outside of the silo, and then somebody typing onto a keyboard. It's hard to tell whose hands they are, but they definitely look female. And then Kennedy saying that she doesn't remember anything. And Camille is sitting there in the background again, obviously keeping a very close eye on her. And then it seems like she's actually looking at the footage of her going outside, either returning to their silo or entering the other silo. But I don't know why she would be looking at herself entering the other silo, because it seems like that's what they want to keep a secret. And then Kennedy says, accept what they tell her. So basically, other people, her friends, know that they are suppressing her memories. And the way that the lyrics are integrated into this, at this point, we see Juliette back inside what looks like the other silo with a bunch of the dead remains that she's walking over, and the crunching sound that those make. Oh my gosh. And the song lyrics are saying, and this one's coming to an end, which could mean the present day silo, or it could mean the flashback alluding to why the silos were built and humanity retreating into them. Some more flashes of her drinking and taking these drugs that Camille is giving her, and then a flash of Juliette in the suit with lies written over it. Now, lies was what was actually written in the other silo, which to me at this point makes me think that yes, in fact, she does return to the other silo and must bring Solo back with her at some point. I'm thinking this has to happen towards the end of the season, because it's probably going to take a few episodes for her to regain her memories. Then we see another flash of the pills and her drinking water. And then Kennedy saying to her, you are the only one who's ever got out. Then Juliette holding up the message that she did at the very end of season 2. She says it's not safe, do not come out, because typically with rebellions, people want to go outside. And Juliette's whole mission was coming back to the silo and warning them, hey, don't go outside. This is not good. And her and Solo had heard the explosion all the way from his silo. And then we return to Kennedy's dialogue, who had said before, as I mentioned, you're the only one who's ever gone out and survived. Then we see Juliette wearing a blazer with her hair pulled back, and she looks a little bit more purposeful. Maybe this is the point when she has got her memory back. Then the song lyrics, there's a new voice calling. So I think the new voice calling with her walking with purpose must mean our girl Juliette is finally back. It appears then there's some sort of a meeting. We see Robert Sims addressing the crowd in the cafeteria, Camille sitting by his side, along with Juliette, Sheriff Billings, and some others. Sims is saying truth does not come without a cost. This actually reminds me a lot of From. Literally, we see painted on a barn at some point. And also just to mention quickly about the whole display. It was thought that the conspiracy was actually that it was safe to go outside. There's green, there's lush, everything looks great. But it turns out the display on the actual helmet when people are sent out to clean is what is false. They make people think it's all nice. That's why people clean in the first place. But Juliette figured it out. It started flickering when she got to a certain point and realized this is the fake part. It's the display on the helmet, not the actual display in the silo. Things really are bad outside. There's a smiling crowd member, which I'm thinking is probably the same point when they're having the meeting. And then there's a gavel that slams down. People are clapping. Then we have McLean saying the amount of panic if people found out as Juliette is rising. I imagine she is some kind of a hero at this point. Everybody was like, oh, Juliette lives, Juliette lives. And Juliette really did live. So obviously her friends, her close network are figuring out that there is a lot more to this. I'm imagining once Juliette does get her memory back, she obviously confides in the people that she knows, trusts, and loves. Then I think the next shot for me at first looked like rebellion, but then if you look closely, there's actually a shard body being lifted up on a similar lift to where Juliette's body was being lifted up. So I'm thinking this must be Bernard. And then we flash to Billings saying, found out what? Somebody unlocking a metal box that is secured with a belt. And it's hard to tell exactly what is inside that box. It's a very quick flash. But something in the box is then secured to a wall or something, maybe some kind of a key to unlock a different door, maybe a tunnel. I had said last season, I was convinced that there are actually tunnels connecting the silos, but it seems like the tunnel underneath was just leading to that AI generated voice who tells the people who decode things and make it down there about the safeguard. Then we hear Carla say how much time we have left with this little countdown ticker. It's an analog one, and it says 294. So I'm imagining 294 days, just under a year. Then there's a night shot with Juliette with somebody else looking at the cafeteria display at nighttime, and she's kind of going like this and saying she gets splinters of memories. And then in the next shot, it's revealed that it is Sheriff Billings. And then we're getting more of these flashes of Juliette with the doors to the silo opening, her entering her silo 18 once again. And then we see the note that is burning. Somebody obviously gives it to her. We know that her friends down in mechanical, they've got connections and they're able to get a message to her. And she's burning the message. It says, do not take the pills. So hopefully Camille's not going to be looking too closely and Juliette can taper off of these and regain her memories, which I'm imagining happens probably close to mid-season, maybe a little bit before. Then there's some kind of a gear turning, maybe a safe combination lock or something. And these two mechanical elements coming together on what looks like it could be a door. Then we see the actual door opening, and it looks like this is near a trash chute. We see some trash bags set off to either side with Sheriff Billings watching as someone's opening the door. It looks like McLean, and then there are some letters on either side of the door that say CS6, and there's a sign, authorized personnel only. And then Juliette saying, if the founders cared so much, why do they need to kill a silo? Going back to the whole safeguard pipe of it all that Solo was able to let Juliette know about because that was something that his mom was working on and figured out how to cap that, safeguard that pipe to avoid the toxic gas. But it seems like there's also some kind of a danger by doing so. And as Juliette is saying this part about killing the silo, we see people in suits and this sort of yellow gas looks a little bit toxic. And maybe once the safeguard is set, there are a select few that are able to put on suits and survive that. And they're basically spraying this stuff. But I thought that the safeguard was actually like one big giant pipe, not a bunch of people spraying. Maybe there's a secondary notion of the safeguard as well, where it's manual distribution. Maybe if the initial safeguard fails, there are a select few that know how to still get this poison out there. Then there's a quick flash of that Pez dispenser, which we saw at the end of season 2, exchanged between the journalist and the congressman. And I believe she went to Oregon, who are the Oregon Ducks, and he got that as a little token or memento. And we've seen the Pez dispenser inside of the silo itself with the Sims child. So how did that get there? Are there descendants of the journalist Helen down in this silo? I imagine that there must be for this to be there. And Juliette is the one who's sort of snapping that duck head. And then Camille is saying the questions that she's asking as she's standing in front of the overseer. And Camille saying these questions are going to get us killed. Meanwhile, it looks like Juliette is inspecting a dark hallway, probably trying to get answers of this pipe, this safeguard situation, and maybe how she can stop it. More flashes down into the silo. And then we see people running up the stairs at one point, which could be an act of rebellion. And then Juliette says, there's something I have to do, as we see a banner hanging off of or being dropped off of the side of one of the floors of the silo. Now, last season, it was Juliette Live, so maybe it's something else at this point. Maybe it will mirror the other silo and say something like lies. But Juliette says there's something I have to do to protect everybody as we see her descending on a rope. Then more flashes. We see her putting down the previous sheriff's badge outside when she first goes out to clean at the end of season 2. Another view of this analog countdown. And now it's flashing down to 169 days. So that's actually a pretty significant passage of time between these two tickers. We see Kennedy looking down into the silo, probably at whatever, I don't know, Juliette is doing. And then Camille says, you made your choice. People are running. It looks like it's down in mechanical and sort of shielding their faces from what looks like to be this yellow toxic gas. So is the safeguard released? Lucas Kyle only told Bernard about it, who then basically gave up his job, which seems like everybody does once they figured out that it's all pointless. So did Juliette make it down to that tunnel and then decide to tell everybody and then the safeguard is actually unleashed? Seems like that's possible. Juliette herself is covering up her face. I'm imagining that covering your face with clothing, probably not going to keep you safe, but obviously we know there's a season 4 and our lead Juliette must survive. People are struggling to get out. We see Camille talking to Juliette. People banging on doors, breaking them down, maybe at the Sims house. People probably aren't very happy with Camille, especially once people in Juliette's network figure out that they've been drugging her this whole time. And Camille says, you're friends as well. Knox is getting carried off. And then we see our guy Solo with the nice fresh haircut. Doors being barricaded down. It looks like a rebellion or people trying to escape. Juliette saying, what are you afraid that we'll find? A flash to Camille with some red in the background with tears in her eyes. And meanwhile, the song is saying, there's a new world coming. Sorry about the singing. I know. And then a flash up into the silo lighting up. And this flash actually looks newer, so maybe this is a flashback of the origin of the silo. Then we see the truth flashed on the screen with Juliette in her suit. And she's walking backwards, which makes me think she's probably replaying these memories in her head of cleaning, heading into Solo's silo. And again, these like remains of bodies and the crackling, the sound effects department really nailed that. Then we hear Paul Billings saying, "We do not know why we're here," with Juliette falling down concrete, which looks like it actually happened in season 2. Flash of the fiery door, potentially when Juliette was re-entering. But actually, when you look closer, it says deputy station, and these are people in raider suits. So there's probably some other kind of incident with the rebellion or something that happens. Lies flashes on the screen again with Juliette walking in a suit, this time inside of the silo in a tunnel. And that looks like it is the exit of the silo. So it could be from last season. It could be she's going out again to retrieve Solo. Paul once again saying, "We do not know when it will be safe." Then we see the helmet being taken off of Juliette. So is she returning again? I imagine you probably have to go through some kind of a process to clean yourself. Like they're probably not going to have just people not wearing any suits taking the helmet off. So is she getting fitted? And this is part of the end of the fitting. Paul continuing to say, "We do not know when it will be safe to go outside." And then what looks like it could be underground with Juliette's head popping up, unclear about that. Text on screen that says, "In the past." The door to the silo is closing. Paul continues to say, "We only know that today is not the day." And here, at the 1:55 mark of a 2-minute and 37-second trailer, we see finally the flash into the world before. The grass is green. People without helmets look like they're descending down into the silo. So at this point, the air must not be toxic. Like people are literally smiling and looking pretty happy to be there, which actually reminds me a lot of Paradise. Then we see that aerial shot and the song lyrics say, "Coming to an end." There's one central hub, it looks like, with little roads sort of branching off from it. And we see all of these other silos, which was the big reveal at the end of season 1. Then there's a control panel with buttons for each one of the 50 silos. There's a little menu off to the side with lights that must illuminate. They say silos, water station, medical cafe, food stall, bar, information point, seating area, stage area, and restrooms. So is this the area, the welcome area outside of the silos? Now, there are buttons here for 50 silos. We learned that there are actually 51. So is the 51st one the one that controls all of this? Somebody presses one of the buttons and we continue to see this expansive aerial shot. And the music gets a little bit more frantic and dark at this point. Again, we hear the lyric "coming to an end" and we see police cars flashing, which obviously, again, we've shifted to the before times. There's a motorcycle that's trying to pull over a car that has Daniel and Helen inside of it. So obviously they're onto something. They're working together here. There's a quick flash of what looks to be a subway underground somewhere. Is there a subway system in the silos? Or is this within the world before? Obviously, it is in the world before, but it's hard to tell if this is inside the silo and it was something maybe operating between the silos before. So we see a subway and then Pierce saying the end of the world. Pierce being a new character and a woman running outside as if she's being chased out of that subway car. Then we see Laura Ennis. She looks like she's some head bee in charge. Walking outside of this airplane hangar. It's bright, it's white, it's shiny. Is she the person in charge of all of this, the initiator of the silos, the controller potentially of the silos? Then we see Colin Hanks' character, who must be Pierce, saying "cannot be stopped." A quick flash to Congressman Daniel, and then some fighter jets, as we hear Pierce saying it can only be survived. And it looks like one of these fighter jets is very much going down. There's a female pilot in there with a look of shock and horror on her face, or with what you can see with the whole like mask thing on. Robert says, "Juliette," as it fades to black, "whatever you're going to do." As we see, it looks like Juliette and Camille walking through one of the vault doors. And he's saying, "Whatever you're going to do it now." And it appears that Juliette is standing now in front of this AI-driven overseer. So Camille and Robert at some point must give her access, unless it is just Robert giving her access going against Camille, which would actually be pretty interesting because there has been a little bit of a power struggle dynamic between the married couple. And I feel like Robert's a little jealous that Camille keeps doing all of these things and he's a little bit powerless. Juliette's looking at the overseer. We hear again with the lyrics, there's a new world coming. And a sun, maybe an eclipse situation, some kind of a planetary body moving as we see this yellow in the background. Could be an explosion, could be an eclipse. And then a pillar crumbling with that same yellowish orange glow in the background. We get the word silo and then the song lyric, and it's just around the bend. And it's funny with the whole planetary thing. At one point last season, one of my theories was, are they actually on the moon? But I'm pretty sure that ship or spaceship has sailed. But the words silo are actually like crumbling, as if they're cement that are crumbling. Anyway, this is a pretty solid trailer. It got me really excited for season 3. And I actually like that there's more content in the trailer that is inside of the silo versus outside. So I'm hoping maybe it'll be a 3/4 balance where we get 3/4 in the silo and then a quarter outside. So that way it doesn't take away too much of the groundwork they've established here over these first 2 seasons. I'm pretty excited about the 3rd season. I hope you are too. And again, please like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you stick with me for weekly videos. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again soon. Media Melanie, clicking off.